Hello and welcome back to the studio where we paint away the stress of everyday life. Now I want today to dispel the myths of gesso. Yes, gesso again. But I need to explain this. I want to explain its importance, and I want to show you a very quick way of mixing your own gesso at home to save you loads of money. Now there are iCards there with loads of videos in on gesso. Just pop along there and click on those and have a look. But I want to get straight onto this and explain a few things and dispel a few myths. So basically, I got one of these fantastic containers. These are very, very cheap plastic containers. They're food containers which you can buy in any shop. And these actually cost me just $1.99 for 10. How fantastic is that? Now, these hold roughly about 500 grams, and I find them excellent for gesso. And as I'm going on, I'm going to talk a little bit about gesso. I'm going to just tear my scales up. Now, ideally, what we need is acrylic paint, which is this stuff. There we go, which is that stuff. That's very, very expensive. And for what we need, and I don't recommend you using that, but if you want to make professional gesso, that's the boy you need. That's definitely the boy you need. Or you just need to get some white pigment like this. There we go. And you can make your own paint by just using the recipes that's in the iCards there. But that's the way that they do it. Obviously they use titanium white, or titanium oxide in fact. But what we're going to do today is very easy. And we're going to go out and buy some of this. You can buy a smaller one than this, but this is quite a lot. I had this on offer. And it's a Dulux white household paint. And it's matte. Now I like matte because it hasn't got so much latex in it. And because this is a latex house paint, what's the difference between house paint and normal acrylic paint, you might ask? Very simply is this is designed to fade and deteriorate over time, where proper acrylic paint like this isn't. It's more archival. So using household paint, not ideal, but it's possible. And the art forger John Myatt has already used. So it was household paint, but it was the trade paint. There's a little bit more pigment in trade paint. Here we are. Okay, mindful of information here today. Where'd I put my cup? So what we're going to do is we're going to get some of this paint, and quite simply, all I'm going to do is take 100 grams of this paint out of the pot like that with this little plastic disposable cup. It's the easiest way I found out of dispersing paint out of there. Okay, so we need a bit of paint, and it's quite inexpensive. This, I think, it only cost me like £15, to be honest, all this white paint. So we need a bit of white paint in there. So we are, we go 150 grams. Let's push the boat out. There we are, roughly 150 grams. There's 163 in there. But who's counting? It doesn't really matter. Disposing of that plastic container in the bin, because they're very inexpensive. There we go. Let's put that down. Okay. Oh, gesso, if you think about gesso, it's quite a nice creamy consistency, and it's got an essence of grit to it. Like when you put it on the surface, you can feel a little bit of texture to it. So but that's chalk and stuff like that that's added. But let's get this to this stage first. Let's get a stirring stick. In fact, let's get a palette knife. Now we need some distilled water. There we go. Distilled water, H2O. The reason we use distilled water is because it's not going to go mildew. If you use tap water or anything like that, then there's a chance that it'll sweat and go mildew over time. So we need to add some water to this. There you go. A little bit at a time. And let's just get this down. Let's thin it down. That's all we're doing, is adding a little bit of moisture to it, a little bit of water, just to thin the paint down, to make it a little bit more fluid. Now, what the makeup of this paint is latex. It's not as good, it's not as archival as acrylic polymer resin, which is what this is there. That's acrylic polymer resin, that's pure resin, or glazing medium, as you might know it. But everything I show you is available on the website, but I'm just showing you how to make your own cheap version of gesso. Now, you may see that there's loads of recipes out there, and they're all saying that you need to add this and need to add that, and need to add this amount, and to be quite honest with you, I'm not saying none of them are wrong, but I'm also not saying none of them are right, including my own recipes. Because over the period of time, what I found is it's better to do it by eye. And once you get used to making gesso, you'll never have to buy it ever again. So I got a nice creamy consistency there, like that. Now what I need to do this is to add a little bit of a binding agent in it, and I just mentioned the use of glazing medium, which is that. Now you can add some of this glazing medium, you can buy it in the shop or you can buy it from my store, and this is just pure acrylic resin basically. Now you can add some of that to that. That's going to bind it. Or if you haven't got that and you want to go out and buy something a little bit cheaper, buy some PVA glue, school glue, Elmer's glue, carpenter's glue. It's all basically the same thing. Type in PVA adhesive in Google, do some research, and it'll tell you all the different things that this is actually called. I think it's polymer vinyl acetate, I think. I might be wrong, but I know it as polymer vinyl adhesive. There we go. So all I'm going to do is just got to put a little glob of that in. There we go. I don't know, there's about 20 odd grams of that just went in there, and the only reason I'm adding that is to give this a little bit more of a binding capability. In other words, there's less chance of this going to flake off now, and more chance of it sticking, because I've replaced some of the latex with some PVA glue. There we go. So we got a lovely consistency. Now what manufacturers tend to use are two things when they come to put the grittiness into the gesso, as calcium carbonate, which is powdered chalk basically, and marble dust. Now I prefer marble dust because it's got a better texture. There's a lot more grit to it. I like a gritty gesso. There's recipes out there. People have added plaster of Paris, talcum powder, cornstarch, baking powder, polyfiller, powdered filler, that's for filling holes in the wall, and loads of other things. And what I would say to this is they're not stable. They are not stable. Otherwise manufacturers would use them, but they're not stable. In my experience, the main ingredient of gesso is calcium carbonate, and that's why I advise you to get some if you can. If you can't, then try the plaster of Paris, talcum powder, cornstarch, baking powder, polyfiller, etc. Try it, see what happens. But when you put it on the canvas, it's not going to be stable. There's a chance it'll peel away and flake off and things over the years. So it's entirely down to you. It's your choice at the end of the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some this calcium carbonate. Let's not use that one because it's got blue in it. I got some calcium carbonate. Now, depending on your own personal preference, and how chalky you want this paint, is the amount of chalk you actually put in it. So I'm going to put in, I would hazard a guess, that was like about 30 grams. As you can see, I'm not worried about specific amounts. All I'm worried about is what this paint is going to look like and how it's going to feel on the canvas. So we need to mix that in. You need to mix it in quite well because it can go lumpy. So give it a bit of a play and just keep mixing away with that. And if you find this a little bit thick, get a little bit of your H2O and put a splash more in there just to thin that down. And this is basically all gesso is. Now there are gessos out there, as I said, that are made with marble dust instead of calcium carbonate, which are really nice because that's the ones I prefer. There's also, you can pick up a gesso that's got a combination of both. It's 50% calcium carbonate, 50% marble dust. It's basically all down to you as an artist. And what I've been showing lately in my paint mixing videos is that this is personal preference. You can make this the way you want it and the way you like using it. Now, the other question I normally get at this stage is, how long will that keep? Well, it can keep up to 2 years plus, as long as you keep it airtight. Molly just said, as long as you can keep it airtight and keep it in a cool, dark place or out the bright sunlight, it should be fine. It should be fine. There's no reason why you can't keep paint for extended lengths of time. You'll know as soon as you open that whether it's usable or not. So you just keep mixing that. If it's a bit lumpy, it doesn't matter in the least, and all you need to do is put an airtight seal on that. And there's another small amount of gesso that I've made up, which I can use on a painting I'm going to be doing shortly. So I'll be using that in a lesson and explaining that and linking that to this video. So that's it, really. Very simple, inexpensive way to save yourself loads of money with the stuff that you can get your hands on in any shop or DIY centre. So give it a try. Play around with the mixture. Don't worry about being accurate, because at the end of the day, the only person it really matters to is yourself. And if it's going to make your life easier by painting wonderful paintings like I got behind me, then I've done my job. So thank you very much for joining me in the studio today. And let's go and paint away the stress of everyday life on another lesson. And I will see you on a forthcoming Monday lesson. Don't forget, I upload at 7:30 Greenwich Mean Time every Monday. So I'll see you then. Bye.